Bienvenidos a esta segunda temporada de H.O.P.E. En este 2025 estamos muy felices, muy esperanzados, muy emocionados de todo lo que hemos preparado para ustedes. Y definitivamente Dios ha ido abriendo puertas maravillosas para nosotros poder seguir cumpliendo nuestra misión de impulsar el bienestar de las personas con autismo y sus familias para que puedan vivir al máximo de su potencial juntos. Gracias por estar aquí, gracias por el apoyo de siempre. Les anticipo que este va a ser un H.O.P.E. sumamente rico, sumamente satisfactorio para todos. De verdad que gracias por estar aquí y acompañarnos en esta misión. Desde el año pasado que tuvimos a hermosos profesionales, hermosas personas que nos enriquecieron nuestras vidas. Si no han visto alguno de nuestros H.O.P.E. pasados, pueden entrar a nuestro canal en YouTube y allí ver las personalidades que tuvimos desde el año pasado. Estuvimos andando igual que este año, que vamos a comenzar viendo el cuidador, viendo la familia. Nosotros el año pasado comenzamos con la familia, el abordaje integral, luego nutrición, gastro, el cerebro. Así que vayan y véanlo si no los han visto. Y bueno, vamos a lo que vamos aquí. Este H.O.P.E. es muy especial, tenemos a una persona de lujo y antes de introducirla quiero decirles que este H.O.P.E. va a ser en inglés. Cuando lo publiquemos lo vamos a publicar con subtítulos en español. Al final del H.O.P.E. pueden enviar sus preguntas por el chat o durante el H.O.P.E. lo pueden ir enviando en el chat y nosotros al final tendremos un espacio para poder satisfacer sus inquietudes. Vamos a pick el brain de Julia Harper, ya lo dije, perdón. Vamos a pick el brain de nuestra invitada y definitivamente va a ser algo muy especial. Así que, sin más, vamos a darle espacio a nuestra invitada estrella, la doctora Julia Harper. Julia, are you there? Yay! Welcome. Muchas gracias, Julia, por todo tu apoyo a lo largo de varios años. Thank you so very much for your support. Thank you so very much for your presence. This is our first H.O.P.E. of the year, and we couldn't be more honored to have you here. So thank you. Y bueno, vamos a contarle un poquito de quién es Julia para aquellos que tal vez no saben quién es Julia, que lo dudo. Pero la doctora Julia Harper es una esposa, madre, terapeuta ocupacional, dueña de negocios, psicóloga, mentora de entrenamiento de vida, oradora, escritora. Ella reúne todos estos roles para servir su misión de ayudar a las personas a vivir sus vidas más allá de las limitaciones. Durante más de 20 años, Julia ha trabajado como terapeuta ocupacional pediátrica, centrándose en la creación de programas terapéuticos basados en el cerebro, que aprovechan la neuroplasticidad, la capacidad del cerebro para adaptarse y cambiar, y su centro, hermosísimo, de terapia de renombre mundial, ofrece un Way to Hope, que fusiona sus dos modelos, Hope, Harper's Optimal Protocols for Enrichment, que se centra en volver a reconfigurar el cerebro de aquellas limitaciones fisiológicas de aprendizaje y de atención, y W.A.Y, What About You, que entrena el cerebro para ir más allá de las limitaciones emocionales y de pensamiento. Es todo eso y mucho más, pero sobre todo es alguien a quien nosotros admiramos. Es una persona que no solamente como profesional, sino desde el punto de vista personal, es alguien a quien estimamos mucho y admiramos. Así que, welcome Julia again. So, we'll get right into it. And our audience is composed of mostly parents, obviously most of them moms, caregivers of people with autism, most of them, educators, therapists, psychologists, people in science, etc. And from the start, what we've wanted to do as an organization is help families as a whole, help have an integrated approach to improvement of people's lives, of our kids' lives. And we say that we cannot improve the lives of our children. And I remember that from the first day I think I stepped at your center, and I thought that I was going to get my son fixed, and then they wanted to fix me, and I'm like, I'm not the one with the problem. No. So that's one of the things that we need to focus on, is having everyone on board and everyone in a healthy state of being. And so that is why we wanted to have this topic first off in the year, the benefits of self-awareness for caregivers. But before we go into self-awareness, what is awareness?
So I think before I answer that question, I want to separate two concepts. Some of you may be familiar with it, but so please, be patient with me if you already are. But I would like to really construct this conversation around the difference between physiology, the brain, and psychology, the mind. So we are Therapy's Family Center, and I am joining in here with Lisbeth because, as she discussed, this is really about families. And we just celebrated our 26th year as Therapy's Family Center.
Congrats.
Thank you. And that came with some bruises. That didn't come easily. And one of the things that we had to do in those 26 years was go from being Therapy's, a center that focused only on children, to Therapy's Family Center. And why did we do that? It really is based on this distinction between the brain and the mind, physiology and psychology. So when a family comes in, we know that basically we are treating the brain of the child and the mind of the caregiver. And that's an important distinction to make, because yes, families come, and all of you listening, whether you're a caregiver by terms of a teacher, a parent, an aunt, and uncle, we have a tendency to put all of our attention on the child, and we want to get skills out of them, right? We want them to improve. We want them to do better. We want to maximize potential. We can all agree with that. And the physiological approach to that is, what can I do to access neuroplasticity? What can I do to access gut health? Or whatever interventions you're doing it focused on, what can I do to access help for my child, for this person's brain and skill to improve, right? That's one facet of it. However, what we know is that regardless of what you do related to the child's brain and supporting their development, that has to happen in the context of your family. And what we learned over the years at Therapies and through the science is that it's one system. And so the brain can have access to certain abilities, but if it does not have the opportunity created for those abilities to be used, then you're not going to get maximum potential. You're not going to get those skills transferred. You're not going to get them to be able to really access those skills and use them in a functional way in their lives. So, I often tell people it's almost like, somebody training for a marathon, and they go into the gym and they strengthen their muscles, and they do massages, and they do all of this great stuff to prep their muscles to be able to run. But they never go outside, and they never go actually run the race. They never actually apply those skills. So what if you have the ability to run? If you don't use it, it's just sitting there as untapped potential. And so when we think about interventions for the children, what we're trying to do is build potential into the brain, build skill in. But when we think about what's actually going to allow them to be functional, that's when we go into the environment, the family environment, the ability for the family to create those opportunities for the brain to be used. Now, I said all of that to get to the topic of psychology, right? The mind, because the part where the family comes in is that they have to be able to be aware. So you ask the question, what is awareness? And awareness is about seeing, simply put, seeing what is happening outside of me and what is happening inside of me at the same time. And so when a family member, a caregiver, a person who's working with a person who's having a challenge is unable to have the awareness to see what is happening, what is actually happening in the environment and in the situation, and they lack the awareness to see what's happening inside of them at the same time, that's what's going to undermine their ability to create the opportunities that we want. So I want to tie the two things together, right? Because, a concrete example, my child is crying. Classic. Everybody, or my child doesn't want to do something. Let's just even take away crying. Let's just say you ask them to do something and they don't want to do it. So the child says no, or the child cries, or the child runs away, or they do whatever they do because they don't want to do it, right? First thing awareness is, can I see what actually happened? Can I see A, that I asked? Can I see B, did I ask something that this child is capable of doing? If they are capable of doing it, can I have the awareness? Can I see what they actually did? So if I said, give me the pencil, can I see that I asked? Can I see how I asked? Can I see the child heard it? Can I see that they have the ability to do it? That's all of the stuff that's happening outside of me. And then I also have to have the awareness of, okay, and when the child didn't give me the pencil, they ran away or they cried or they screamed, what happened inside of me? What did I feel? What emotion came up? What did I think? What am I thinking about this child doing this? And the other thing is, how am I going to react to that, right? So there's a reaction that's coming up in me. Before we talk about what you do, before you even think about how to handle a situation, first thing that's happening is there's a reaction coming up in you. So awareness is the ability to see all of what is actually happening, the reality of it. And when you can see the reality of what's happening outside of you and inside of you at the same time, that then allows you to have the opportunity to come up with potentially the best response. When we're unable to see, we can't do anything. You cannot respond without seeing. So awareness is the ability to see what is present and what is real.
Well, thank you, Julia. But then, how can we know if we're aware? How can we know at what level of awareness we are? If we are, in fact, looking beyond what we're seeing outside or seeing inside how I'm feeling, what I've done, etc. So outside and inside levels of awareness.
Well, that's multiple questions there. So let's start off with the first one. How can I see what's happening outside? How can I even know if I have awareness of what's happening outside of me? Right? That's a good one because that's actually how you start. Can I actually see what's happening? So an easy thing is, all right, you ask the child the question. Did you notice how you asked them? What did you say? That's as concrete as that. Did you ask a question? Did you give an instruction? So can I have a pencil versus give me the pencil? Those are two different things. And sometimes people are so unaware, they don't realize that they're saying two different things. I often tell this story of a mom who was very, very concerned about her child. She came to therapy, so I'm going to give you a quick version of it. And her child just was obsessed with Coca-Cola, would go everywhere, drink, grab people's Coca-Cola off the table. This was a child on the spectrum. And as a result, she couldn't leave the house. Ultimately, she couldn't leave the house. She was trapped in the house with this kid because of his obsession with Coca-Cola. Long story short, I said, we got to get you out of the house and you can't be trapped by a can of Coca-Cola. So fast forward to they were with us. We worked with them. The child was able to be in the presence of a Coca-Cola without killing anybody. Wonderful. We take him to a store. We're in the aisle with him. I'm in front of Coca-Cola, the refrigerator. I have him handing everybody their Coca-Colas. He's doing perfectly fine. And now it's time for us. The mom watched me for an hour handle the situation. And now it's time for us to leave. And we are putting back the Cokes now. And I say to her, tell him that we are going to leave, right? So she says it to him. And he says to her, this is a classic example of not being aware of what's going on, right? So he says to her, Coca? Right? So he's asking for the Coca-Cola. Coca? And she looks at me. What do I say? What do I say? After she just watched me for an hour, right? So I said, what have I been saying? And she said, you said no. I said, so what do you think you should say? She says, no. And then I said, okay, Go ahead. And she turns to him and she goes, no, I. And I looked at her. I said, what? And she said, whoa, what did I do? And I said, what did you say? She said, did exactly what you told me. And I said, sweetheart, I said no. You said no, I. Did you do the same thing I did? And it took her like 5 minutes just to be aware that she didn't just say no. She said no, I. Now, I'm talking to your audience. You guys know the difference between no and no, I, right? They have completely different meanings. And so before I could even get into what was happening inside of her, for her to say the no, I just had to get her aware of what she actually said. What you said, mom, was no, I, right? So something as simple as, can I concretely see what has happened, what I said, what they did, what he asked for? See, the challenge of it is this: we have these minds, and our minds are full of interpretation. That's what our minds do. It interprets, right? And that's not a bad thing. It's just what it does. It's like, lungs breathe, hearts beat, minds interpret. So, fine, we have to accept that minds interpret. And so, because that's the nature of the mind to interpret, then what we want to be clear about is, can I see what actually happened before I look at the interpretation of it? Because there's a huge difference between reality and your interpretation of reality. And so awareness is, can I have the ability to just see reality before I ask myself, what am I making it mean? My mind is going to make it mean something. And that's highly individual, highly contextualized, highly personal. I get that. And we can respect that interpretation. But what we first have to realize and appreciate is that there will be an interpretation. So let's first of all see if we can capture the reality before we capture the interpretation and compare them.
And usually, when we're trying to interpret what's happening, it goes, well, not usually, always, and you can correct me, it goes through a filter of all our baggage or how we were raised or everything that we've been through.
Right. And so the mind is what creates that filtration. And right. So it's very, very contextualized. And one of the things that awareness is even having awareness of that filter, right? And knowing there's that filter. And because of the filter, my interpretation is skewed. Right. So one of the things is people don't recognize the filter. And even if they do, then they say, well, it's my filter. Well, great. It is your filter, but it's skewing the information. And so awareness is, can I be even aware of the filter, and can I be aware of how the filter is skewing what is happening? All of that is part of awareness. Awareness is just the ability to see what is happening, what's happening outside. See, I have this filter. See that because of my filter, I'm interpreting this. I can even see my interpretation. And I can look at all of those parts and see how they line up. Because if I'm not aware of all of those parts, what's going to happen is I'm going to react. What's going to happen is I'm not going to bring the best version of myself to the situation, whether it's my child or anybody else. And what is going to happen is that you are going to be going counter to your goal, right? I want to show up. I want to bring the best of myself forward. I want to maximize the potential of my child. So if I go back to that story, mommy, no, what she was bringing to that situation was not the opportunity for her child to adapt. She was working on, I want him to be able to adapt. I want him to be able to accept and know about Coke. She said that. She knew it. But in that moment, she didn't bring that awareness forward. So you could know what you want, but knowing what you want and being present in the moment, that's what awareness is, to say, I am saying I want my child to adapt. I'm saying I want my child to accept a no, but I am the one that will not create the opportunity for him to hear the no from me. So he isn't going to accept a no if I'm not going to say it. Back to the point of opportunity.
Right. And so how do we know? This may sound like a weird question, but how do we know if we're actually aware? Because in that case of the Coke story, it took you 5 minutes to help that person become aware of the situation. And so,
Well, I'm going to give you a statistic and you're going to be intrigued to hear it, but 93% of us are not aware. That's the point, right? So that's what I actually did my study on, was actually looking at self-awareness, especially in caregivers, right, of children with special needs. And sadly to say, 93% of us are not aware. That's the challenge. So we shouldn't even wonder if we are or not aware. Let's just chunk up and realize most of us are unaware. So actually, that's another, I have stories of parents because that's what I live with all the time. I had a dad who was recently here, and we were working with him. His daughter is also on the spectrum, teenager, and he started doing the work of being aware of himself. And he started off 6 weeks, and he said, "Oh, I'm a highly aware person." And at the end of the intensive, he said, "You know what, Julia? You know what I learned? I am now aware that I'm unaware." And I said, "You know what? Congratulations. I'm so proud of you just for that." Because when you could at least learn and recognize I am unaware, that is the beginning of awareness. But when people assume to be aware, then they won't learn. So let's just put it this way, Lisbeth. Most of us, 93% of the population, is unaware. And because we can be aware that we are unaware, we can then put some awareness to that. It's the beginning of awareness. Oh, I'm unaware. Let me at least begin to look at that. But when I think I'm aware, then there's no awareness for me to learn.
So I've heard you speak about when you're aware of the outside and more aware of the outside than being self-aware. How can we know how we're focused? How can we understand the track that we're taking?
Well, as I said, we begin by acknowledging that most of us are unaware. And so you start off by saying, okay, granted, how do I start to develop awareness first of the outside? And why is that important? Because what's happening outside of you is concrete. And it doesn't need a filter yet. It's just concrete. I am sitting, I am standing, I am moving, I see this, I smell this, right? So it's really being able to start to slow down and say, can I let myself be aware of what's happening outside of me? Now, if you think about in your day-to-day as you deal with, caregiving, whether it is, and I know this is a podcast for parents of children on the spectrum, but caregivers in general,
right?
Whether you're caring for, if it's not the kids, it's the elderly, right? So it might be a thing for your parents,
Right.
And so I'm in that role right now, caring for parents. And so being aware as they say something, as you see something, you walk up to the bedroom, there is this mess on the floor, or there is this food that was put down. You kind of look and you go, what is it that I'm seeing? What is it that's happening? Start to really build your sensibility to look at the reality of things. That's the first thing I would advise people to do, is just to take the time and say, okay, here I am, and this is what's happening right now. And by the way, Lisbeth, as you well know, I practice what I preach, right? So I go through a day all day long, box after box, there's clients, this, and I have multiple roles, right? Whether it's that just 5 minutes before this, I was in a business meeting, and 5 minutes before that, I was in a session with a child, and 5 minutes before that, I was with parents, and then before that, I was coaching somebody. So my roles change like that, right? And so just the awareness of, okay, this is what I'm doing now, right? Just slowing down and going, what am I doing now? What box am I in now? What's happening now? So before I got on the podcast, I was like, I'm sitting here, right? That's I had to say it out loud to me. I'm just sitting here. I'm looking at the screen. I'm going to listen for the question. What is it that is happening? Because we have a tendency to run ahead Okay, this is the next thing that I have to do, and the next thing I have to do. And when you have somebody who is dependent on your care, you're always thinking about all the things that you have to do, right? So even as you sit here, parents, listening to this podcast, you're like, there's dinner to cook, there's homework to do, there's homework to check, there's bath time, there's bedtime, there's, whatever else is going on in your world, somebody to pick up, something to schedule, an email to send, right? There's 10,000 things to do. And so we can run ahead of ourselves. And I can promise you, when you run ahead of yourself, you're never ever able to be present with what is happening with you in the moment. So awareness is about right now, what's going on. And you can ask yourself, am I aware of what's happening right now? Now, the next thing I like to tell people is once you could identify what's happening, ask yourself a simple question. By the way, my grandmother, who raised me, said the most important thing we can do is ask ourselves a simple question and then be brave enough, brave, that was her word, to give ourselves an honest answer, right? Ask yourself a simple question, be brave enough to give yourself an honest answer. So I'm going to give you a simple question. Whatever the thing is that's happening right now, do I want it or I don't want it? Look how simple that question is, right? So I'm sitting here, I'm looking on the screen. Do I want to be sitting here looking at the screen? Yes. But, I might be sitting in traffic. Do I want to be sitting in traffic? No. I might be standing outside waiting to go into a bathroom and I want to pee. Do I want to stand online and wait to pee? Do I want to, whatever it is, there is something happening. I walk into the room, I see toys on the floor. My kids' toys scattered all over the floor. Do I want that? No. I just put the food down in front of them on the table and they didn't want to eat it. So they screamed. Do I want them to scream? No. So you have to start asking yourself, this thing that's in front of you, do I want it or don't, or is it something I don't want? Now that's really important because depending upon what path that thing goes, that's going to set up your brain and your mind. If it is something that you don't want, and I'm going to give you another number, 70 to 80% of what you experience all day long is going to fall into the category of things you don't want. Most of the things you experience, 70 to 80% are going to be don't wants, which means only 20 to 30% of the time you get smooth sailing, right? But the rest of the time, the things that are happening are things we don't want to be happening. Right? So what does my awareness do? It says, okay, this is what's happening and I don't want it. Now, why is that important? Because when we don't want it and it's happening, our brains are wired to trigger into reaction. Okay, that's how we're just wired. It's a survival protocol that we have left over, and we're going to get wired into reaction. And so people often say to me, Julia, why is it that you want people to know what they don't want? Isn't that a negative perspective, like to focus on what you don't want? And I say this to people all the time. Whether you acknowledge the don't want or not, that don't want is going to trigger a reaction in you. That's how brains work. We're going to react to them. And so the awareness that the don't want is present is our only pathway to move from reaction to response. If we are not acknowledging the presence of the don't want, we're also not acknowledging the presence of the reaction that comes right with it. Okay? And that's an important thing because what we don't recognize is that when that don't want happens and we react, people have a very, very narrow view of what reaction is, right? We think reaction is only, I got angry and I screamed and I yelled and I hit somebody or I threw something and I got what people often call aggressive. That's only one type of reaction. That is an external reaction. It's called fight, and it's an external fight reaction. But we have different reactions. We have flight, which is very calm looking. Very, very calm looking. It looks so pretty. It looks really cute. I look so calm, but I'm inside, I am avoiding the situation. I'm justifying. I am trying to explain, and I'm trying to not deal with what is happening, right? So you gave them the food. They don't want the food. They scream. That's a don't want for you. And now you go into, well, maybe I didn't make the right thing, or he didn't understand, or maybe he's tired, or right. And you start spinning this story in your head, and here you go. You are in flight. You are avoiding dealing with the thing that's happening in front of you. Okay. And so back to the very first point. Once I start doing that as a reaction and I'm avoiding what the situation is, am I creating opportunity? Right? This is about being able to be the caregiver that creates the opportunity for functional use. So, what's the opportunity I want? I want to create the opportunity for this person to sit here and adapt and eat the food and sit at the table and learn this functional skill. But if I don't see that in this moment I am in avoidance mode, I take away that opportunity, right? So this is where the rub is. I want something. I want them to adapt. I want them to eat the food. I want them to behave a certain way. But when I need to face that moment and create that opportunity for them, because of the challenges that it presents for me, I run away from it. So I don't allow for the opportunity. And so every day you're going and you're preparing the food and you're working with people and you're complaining about how your child doesn't eat. But then in the reality of it, the situation that you need to create in your home for that skill to be practiced, for that person to create a new habit around food, you're not doing it because you're avoiding the situation. So that's a way where when we don't recognize our don't want, when we don't recognize our reactions, that's how the reactions then impact our ability to create the opportunity we want for our children, our people to grow and to expand. And that's just one version of it. But the same thing happens with freeze, where I ignore, right? And the same thing happens with a third one. And again, you can calmly ignore, right? I'm sitting here calmly looking away. When you hear, oh, pick your battles, that's freeze. I'm ignoring the situation, otherwise known as being a permissive parent. I can flight. I can avoid the situation, otherwise known as the verbose parent. And I can also do what's called internal fight. So it's a different fight. It's not the kind of fight. It's the fight that looks very calm. And notice I keep using the word calm because it's something that parents and everybody want to push for. I want to be calm. I want to be calm. And calm is lovely. But calm as an outside with a reaction on the inside is lethal. And so the calm version of fight is I'm not yelling and screaming and hitting, but I'm arguing with you in my head and I'm trying to get you to control, I'm trying to control the situation. And that's known as the authoritarian parent. So the thing that's important about awareness is if I am not aware of what's happening, if I'm not aware that this is a don't want, if I'm not aware that in the presence of this don't want, it's going to trigger inside of me a reaction. If I'm not even aware that I'm reacting, then all of that comes in the way of me being aware of how many missed opportunities there are. Every single time I go into a reaction pattern, whether it's to fight and control the situation, to flight and avoid the situation, or to freeze and ignore the situation, it's opportunity upon opportunity upon opportunity that I'm squandering. And that's how we want to pay attention to ourselves because every opportunity we squander is one that's lost for ourselves to get what we want, which is to support ourselves and to support the development of our children.
Y les recuerdo a todos que si tienen alguna pregunta pueden seguirla escribiendo en el chat y al final del Hopecast vamos a hacérselas a la doctora Julia y tratar de aclarar sus inquietudes. Siéntanse libres de escribir sus preguntas. Ahí trataremos de incluirlas todas. Julia, and so creating an opportunity is one of the benefits, from what I hear. I've also heard you talk about in one of your vitamin J's. El que no ha visto los vitamin J's de Julia se pierden de gran cosa. About self-compassion. When you have self-awareness, you have compassion on yourself. Can you talk to us about about that?
Well, a big part of caregiving is burnout. right? And that burnout happens often because there is, first of all, there's the external demand of just being a caregiver. And we all know how that can be difficult and a challenge. But there's also an internal demand. And that internal demand is our demand to do it right and perfect and correct. And there's a struggle. And so one of the things that's super important is this is shifting to the inside awareness. Besides what's happening outside of me, right? When I start to deal with what's going on inside of me, often I don't like what I'm seeing inside of me, right? I might be beating myself up because I made a mistake, or I might be experiencing frustration. All right, let's just go back to, I'm going to keep using the example of I put the food down in front of my child because I think it's a simple one or my right to go to, and I want to be as concrete. I don't want this to be airy fairy. So you put the food down, they scream, they cry, they don't want to eat it, and now you're struggling, right? So here's, oh, is it guilt? Did I cook the wrong thing? Should I have done it different? Maybe I should give him what he likes to eat, right? So there's that where you start to beat yourself up. Or there's anger. And I'm like, oh my gosh, oh, ese niño, right? So you start complaining. And then after you start fighting with him in your head about the food, then what kind of mother am I? I'm a horrible mother because I had that thought about my child or I felt that way. Or how about, ay, pobrecito, mi niño, right? So I feel sadness and I think he can't eat it, no puede. And then I start to beat myself up about what demands am I making of him. So I'm just kind of giving you a recording that might be going on in your head all the time as a caregiver. What it ends up doing is now you're starting to beat yourself up. So you go from an external situation of I don't want to an internal situation of I don't want. And what awareness does is I can be aware, this is my emotion. This is my thought. This is what's rising in me, my reaction. And all of it, my darling, is human. That's the part we got to get to because sometimes, as caregivers, we love to just slap that S on our chest and be super,
Right.
right? And we know that caregiving a person with any special need, right? Whether it's your children or a teenager or an adult, your parents, it can be superhuman. It can require superhuman abilities from you. But the fact that you can tap into superhuman powers to handle that situation in the moment does not make you a superhuman. You are still human. And part of your humanity, right? We love to talk about compassion. Compassion is having an awareness of your humanity. And so to be human is to have don't wants. We all get them, 70, 80%. To be human is to blame. My brain is going to blame. To be human is to feel whatever emotion you're feeling. To be human is to have whatever thought you're having. And when we cannot allow ourselves to be human and to have the compassion to see in this moment, everything that's happening inside of me is as human as it gets, then we add an internal burden that makes caregiving that much harder. It's hard enough dealing with the nonsense on the outside. I'm not calling anybody nonsense. I'm calling the don't wants, the crazy, the chaos of life. All of that is hard enough to deal with. And then when you double it with a set of don't wants on the inside, because I don't want to think this and I don't want to feel this and I don't want to do that, you're just making your caregiving burden that much more difficult. It's heavy. You're beating yourself up and it's exhausting and it's not sustainable. And we all know that this is something that you're going to be in for a while, right? So we want to make sure that you keep connection to yourself and your loved one. Notice my words, yourself and your loved one. And if you are not in a situation where you're keeping connection with yourself, you will not keep connection with your loved one. And then you're not in a sustainable pattern. So burnout's going to happen, irritation, frustration, resentment, reactivity, and all of it.
And what would you say to people that think that if they're not in that mode of thinking that they're superhuman and that I cannot have compassion of myself, because once I start having compassion of myself, I will lower the level. No, I have to keep at this, keep at this, keep at this. What would you tell these people?
Well, I would say to that person that you can have one of two things. You can have a product or you can have a process. When you want a product, what you're going to do is you're going to control and you're going to demand, you're going to put a lot of pressure on yourself and on the other to produce the product, which is fine, except you're not going to get independence or any of the big goals you really want. You'll have a product for the moment, right? So you got to be clear about what you want. If what you want is a product for the moment, go for it. You'll absolutely get the product for the moment. But I've been a therapist for close to 30 years. And in 30 years, when I ask people, what do you want for your child? It's never a product, right? The thing we go for, all of us, I'm a parent of two, we have a contract with our children and it's to prepare them for life, right? And when I ask parents, what does that mean? It's like, can I prepare my child, to be able to face life beyond me? Beyond me? Can they go into the world? And so that means I have to prepare a process, not a product. So if you want a product, great. Stay in super mode, stay in pressure mode, and I promise you, you will control for the product that you want. It will not get you the bigger picture goal you have, which is how do I prepare my child, my person for life? Now, also, the side effect of product thinking is you're going to burn out. You are. I've seen it multiple times. You're going to burn out. So it's not a sustainable thing, but if you think you've got it and you've hacked it and it'll work for you, I'm not here to argue. I'm just going to tell you that's what 30 years of evidence has shown. And let me see, if you find a way to hack into super and keep it going for years, call me.
Julia, and is there any such thing as family self-awareness? How are we at as a family?
No, because look at the two words, family and self. Don't work, right? A family is a unit. A self is a self.
Right, I know. But as a family, how can we see ourselves?
Culture of awareness. You could have a family culture of awareness, but you can't have family self-awareness. The self is the self is the self is the self. And one of the things that you could have in the culture of your family is we strive to bring awareness to the family, right? That we have a culture that supports awareness. But no, there's not, but each individual is responsible for their own awareness. So what are the things that you can do to support awareness in your family is, again, listen, I tell parents all the time, children learn what they live, okay? And children don't listen to what you say. They look at what you do. From a brain perspective, I just have to tell you, we have many more pathways that are visual, auditory. Okay? And so kids are not so interested in what you say, right? That's why they tell you now, say less, right? They're interested in what you do. Right. So can you demonstrate self-awareness? That's how you mark for it. The other thing I'm going to tell you is please be willing to be human in front of your children. Admit to wrongdoing, make mistakes, make them loud, make them bold, make them messy, make them proud. Because it's when we are afraid to make the mistakes, to say the wrong thing, to admit to them, to apologize, and to be messy, we send a message that that's not permitted. And the thing about it is, if you don't permit it, then they won't permit it. And if we don't show them that errors, mistakes, problems, life has all of that in it, we're not teaching them resilience. We're not teaching them adaptability. We're not teaching them that what's going to come is a mess and you're going to make mistakes and it's okay. So I often support parents, first of all, be aware, back to awareness, be aware of your relationship to mistakes. If you could, everyone on this podcast can ask themselves that question now. What is my relationship to mistakes? And you might say, and really be brave. I'm gonna ask you what my grandmother said. Ask yourself a simple question and be brave enough to give yourself an honest answer. Because people like to say, oh, I'm fine. I know I'm not perfect. I know I don't, I'm gonna make mistakes. Great. We know that. Knowing that is very different than living it. So ask yourself, when I make a mistake, what happens? What do I do? What do I do? How easy or not easy? Is it difficult for me to admit it? Who do I say to? And what about if I make a mistake in front of my kids? Ask yourself, just concretely, you want to be aware? When was the last time you made a mistake in front of kids? And when you did you admit it? Did you celebrate it? How did you talk to yourself about it? Right? Because they're watching that. They're watching how you relate to mistakes. When you think about if you just spill something, how do you treat it? If you break something, how do you treat it? Notice it. Awareness is noticing.
Right. And how can we create a plan to be more aware as a family of what we're doing, obviously as a person? Where do we start and where do we follow?
Well, I would again remind you, let's not make a family plan. Awareness is individual. I know this is a family show, but I'm going to tell you, don't make a family plan. This is about you and your awareness. First things first, can I be aware that my mind is my mind and my children's minds are theirs? Okay, can we do that? Because
you know
that part when they came out of you, snip, snip, they got their own brain. They got their own mind. And so you stop making a plan for theirs. How's that?
Thank you, Julia.
So we'll start there. And we're going to say that's why my program is called What About You, right? It's about you. So really, if you any impact you want to make on your family, it starts with you. It begins and it ends with you. So I'm going to ask you, what about you? What about your awareness? What plan have you made to build your awareness? And when you say, where do I begin? It begins in all the things that I just started talking about. Being aware of what is happening with you in the moment, outside of you, and if possible, inside of you. Even if you can say, you know what? I'm aware that I am so unaware. I love that for you. Because it's the beginning of awareness. Anything that you can see is awareness.
Wonderful.
And
thank you.
There's nothing that lights me up more than when people go, I saw that. Well, I didn't see it that way. And I always tell people, on my, if there's anything that people could say about me when I die is I hope they say this woman left this life seeing. And I hope that the last thing I think is, I see. Hope I see.
And there's a question here from someone in the audience and said, do you recommend mindfulness practices to improve awareness for caregivers? Meditation, breathing?
Oh, absolutely. I love mindfulness practices. I'm a big fan of mindfulness practices. I meditate every day, absolutely. And I want to say that besides a formal meditation or mindfulness practice, what's really important is caregivers begin where you are, right? So I have to tell you, I remembered when I thought I couldn't meditate. Classic, I don't have time. How many of us say that? I don't have time, right? That's a big barrier. I don't have time. And it's true. I mean, when you're dealing with the kids and the house and the running and the da-da-da-da, who has time? I literally began my mindfulness practice at red lights. I would be, and listen, DR, y'all, traffic, come on now. So you're gonna be sitting
Lo tapone, Julia.
Right? Oh, come on, right? So let it work for you. And I remember when I started, I would start at red lights and I would be like, okay, I'm sitting at the red light anyhow. So let me just sit here while I'm at the red light and take a few breaths. And then after a while, I found myself wishing for the lights to be red. I'd be like driving up to line, my opportunity again to practice, right? And then when I realized that, I was like, oh, I actually like doing this and I'm looking forward to the red lights, was when I began to practice meditation. And I said, okay, I'll start with 5 minutes. Another time that I would practice mindfulness is washing my hands whenever I use the bathroom. Or because, you're going to use the bathroom, so you're going to wash your hands. So even if it was just while I was washing my hands, I would do it. So I'm a big fan of starting where you are, especially as caregivers. We don't need to give you any extra burden. Your children, your life is full enough. So you don't need anybody to be prescribing, sit down and meditate for 15 minutes. Nobody has that. Start where you are and let it grow. Small things often. So some of the principles of neuroplasticity is frequency and consistency. And all practices can rewire your brain, right? And so you can rewire your mind to become more aware by doing small practices often, whether it's a red light here, a hand wash there, a walking down the hallway. I look for small opportunities frequently through the day. So as I go from one thing to the next, what am I doing now? And taking that breath before I start, that's a mindfulness practice, right? That's awareness. So start small and go frequent. Don't go for big because you'll set yourself up for failure.
And that's very important because our minds are very busy. There's so many ideas, there's so many tasks, there's so many don't wants and so many wants that we still don't have or that haven't happened during the day. That's very, very important. And how do we know where to start? I mean, right now I have so many ideas in my head, and how can I center into what is going to be the biggest impact of me to be aware of? I'm not sure if I'm coming across.
Yeah, I'm not sure that question. Can you ask it again?
Of course. If our minds are so busy, we have so
Right.
much in our heads and so many things that have happened during the day. And so if we're going to be aware, if we're going to start being aware of ourselves in order to find the opportunities, in order to have all the benefits of being aware, which thoughts or where should we start picking in order to start seeing an improvement?
So what I suggest people do, again, small things often, is to take a small corner of your day, right? Because too big, too fast, you're going to fail. So you can start off with, is there a particular time of my day that I want to be more aware of, right? And as a caregiver, I will say to you, never when the kids are awake or you're cooking dinner or you're rushing them off to school. All right? Pick a quiet time. Everyone can, bathroom times are good. I'm a big fan of the bathroom because when I say to people, pick a quiet time, then they go, I never have quiet time. Well, you use the bathroom. Okay, so whether you could pick whatever bathroom time, whether it's shower or otherwise, pick a bathroom time. And that usually represents 3 to 5 minutes, sometimes 10, depending upon what you're doing. And you can take that time and say, okay, while I'm here, can I be aware first of what is happening outside of me? Right? That's how you start. So small time, and I start on the outside. Remember, outside is concrete. It's easier to do than inside. Okay? So I'm sitting on the toilet and the door is knocked. Mom! Right? So I can literally go, that's a don't want.
Yeah.
I don't want them to be knocking on the door while I'm sitting on the toilet, right? That's awareness. Okay? You can open the door and step over the toy. That's a don't want. So yes, there's 10,000 things happening. And I'm asking you to just slow it down to what's happening outside of me. And this thing happening outside of me, is it something I want or something that I don't want? I'm sitting in the toilet and nobody knocked on the door and I had 5 minutes to myself. Well, that's a want. So we don't only want to look at don't wants, right? That's a want,
Uh-huh.
right? So I can start to become aware of what I want and what I don't want. And I also want to make sure that we pay attention to the wants, right? Especially when you are a caregiver. You think you're going to have more don't wants than other people, but it's not true. Your don't wants might be more intense, but you're not having a bigger quantity. Everyone has the same amount of don't wants, right? But I also want to tune you into the wants because if you don't look for the wants as well, you don't get yourself a break, right? So maybe your want was, I got to sit on the toilet for 5 minutes. That's a want. Oh, I got to drink this glass of water. And I'm not talking about toxic positivity here,
Right.
please. I want to make sure we're clear about that. I'm not talking about look for the good in everything. No, I'm talking about the reality of your life that there are going to be moments where you get a want. Okay. And I'm going to say this even specifically as a caregiver. Pay attention to the wants you get from your person because you can get so caught in all the don't wants your person gives you, the noses you have to wipe, the poop you gotta clean, the food that they didn't eat, the homework that they didn't get done, the email you got from the teacher. You can get so many of that it can become so inundating and so stressful, right? Remember, every don't want creates reaction inside of you, rising reaction. So also see if you can punctuate with the small ones. What am I getting today? Either from life or even from them. You
Right.
know, I'm a caregiver to my father who has Alzheimer's, and it's tough, right? And so some days are really, really hard, but in the middle of all of the hard, there's always a moment where he says something and you're like, okay, that was funny.
That was
You
one.
know, or even, when I go to see him and I walk into the room, I remember, some every morning when I opened the door and I looked in the room and he smiled and he did this. I was like,
Aw.
okay, he remembered me, right? Because, so just the fact that he remembered today, like, right after that, he's going to say 10,000 things that I don't want him to say, but at least he remembered. So it's punctuating the wants, the don't wants every now and then. Grab the want, grab it. So even awareness of that is important.
Definitely, definitely. There's two other questions. We'll try to just keep it to this. Any other advice for people chronically stuck on stress responses like fight, flight, freeze?
Well, can I tell you, we all chronically, well, first of all, I want to correct the word responses. Those are not responses, they are reactions. So I really make a distinction between the word response and react. Okay? So those are reactions. And like I said earlier, 93% of us are unaware and we have 80% don't want. So if you put those numbers together, right? 93% of us are unaware and we have 80% of our days don't want. Just think about how those two things collide. We're pretty much chronically stuck.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
The first thing I want to say is welcome to humanity. And that's back to compassion and common humanity, right? We all get stuck there. And here's the thing, can I be aware that that's the state of my mind, that my mind is actually programmed to do that? See, one of the ways that we get stuck is that we make the reactivity a don't want. I don't want to be reactive. Well, what I want to say is you will be. You will be. So let's not add insult to injury. You will be, and it's not your fault. It's why the first step of my program is called blame it on the brain, right? What am I asking you to do is to recognize that as a human, that's going to happen. And so instead of fighting with yourself about, all kinds of fights from, no, that's not me, I don't react, to, I shouldn't be reacting, right? You asked earlier, Lisbeth, what are the levels of awareness? And the first level of awareness is called not me. And it's either I am pushing it away. I shouldn't. Or I am avoiding it. No, well, right? Or I am ignoring it. It's not about me at all, right? So the first thing I'm wanting people to get is reactivity is wired into your brain. It's wired. It's not your fault. And so just by acknowledging that you are and will be reacting, that begins your awareness and it begins to break the loop of it. So it starts off with this. You're going to react and then you're going to go 3 days later, oh yeah, I reacted. Then 2 days later, yeah, that was a reaction. Then one day later, yeah, I reacted. Then 12 hours later, then 8 hours, 9, 5, 2, 1. And then you get, the more you bring the awareness in, you're going to get to the point where you just finish reacting, like, I did it again. And then you're going to get to the point where you're you're in the middle of the reaction, right? Something happened and you're reacting like, I'm reacting, and you're going to see that it's happening. The beautiful thing is when you get to the point where you see yourself about to react and you're going to have that choice where you're like, am I going to do it or not? And sometimes you're going to go, hell yeah, I'm just going to react anyhow, right? You choose to do it versus to step away from it. But all of it is part of awareness. So awareness starts with, can I even just recognize that I am reacting or I reacted? That's what I say to people. Just start there. But when people are like, I don't want to be reacting, oh no, I'm not reacting, or I shouldn't be reacting. No, no. Human awareness. I am. I will. It's built into my brain. So can I just at least, if there's anything you guys take away from me, tune myself into it's happening. It's happening. Okay? And when it's happening, I can be aware that it's happening and look out for it. It's like you're driving down the street, you know there's a pothole. You know there's a pothole on your street. Question is, are you going to drive into the pothole every time and be mad because you did? Or are you going to go, I know there's that pothole, so I can be alert and aware of it. See, awareness is what alters my behavior. People are so consumed with, how do I change my behavior? And I say, bring awareness to it. If you bring awareness to the behavior, it is the awareness that alters the behavior. You don't have to worry about trying to change your behavior as much as you have to learn, what am I missing? You have no idea how many, every morning, every day, I ask myself, what am I missing? What am I asking? What am I not seeing? What am I not noticing? What am I unaware of? And just keep asking yourself that, because the more you become aware, the beautiful thing about awareness is that awareness is like a light. It shines on the thing, and by virtue of it being seen, it changes. We know that in the research, by virtue of being observed, the thing that is observed changes. So people really work hard. Oh, how can I change it? And what do I do? And what do I do? Bring awareness. Learn to be aware and deepen your awareness, expand your awareness. And that is what will change you and change the thing. But without that awareness, if you try to just go change, then you're not even aware of what you're changing and it will not work. So I support you to go awareness first.
There's 2 more questions, Julia. We don't want to abuse your time. We said till 7:30 DR time, but I'll leave it to you.
It's okay, I got you.
How can a caregiver identify and manage their own limits through self-awareness?
How can they identify?
How can a caregiver identify and manage their own limits through self-awareness?
So for me to know my limits, I have to know myself, right? I can't know what my limits are if I don't know myself. And, there's an adage as old as time. It says, know thyself above all else, know thyself, and to thine own self be true. So when you say know thyself, that is another word for be self-aware. And to thine own self be true and because you know yourself, you know where to stop, right? So you get your limits through self-awareness. So how do I manage my limits? When I am aware. And here's the thing, specifically, when I can be honest with myself. See, one of the reasons why people don't put limits is because they're not being honest with themselves. They're not honest about what is okay for them, what's not okay for them, what's real, what's good, what's not good. So if I'm not able to see, for instance, anger. A lot of parents, caregivers, have a big challenge with anger. I don't want to be angry, Julie. And I go, why not? Happen to be a big fan of anger. And why am I a big fan of anger? Because anger is a protector of limits. Anger jumps in whenever a boundary is being violated. Now it's interesting because we can either be violating the boundary where it's me violating the boundary by crossing, or me allowing somebody to cross my boundary. So anger just shows up when a boundary is being crossed. The question is, in which direction did the violation take place? Did I cross and went into somebody else's business and to try to control somebody else? If I'm crossing and trying to control somebody else, I'm going to get angry because I can't control them. Or am I angry because I'm permitting somebody to cross into my boundary, right? So anger I love because it's a boundary protector. The thing of it is this: when people don't want to experience anger and they're pushing anger away, instead of being aware, okay, I am angry. See, that's the difference, right? So I am angry, I am aware versus, oh, I shouldn't be angry. No, I am angry. And what is this anger telling me? It's telling me that some boundary is being crossed. Either I'm pushing myself over or I'm letting somebody to push me over. And now then I can be aware, okay, that anger is telling me something about me that's important for me. And now I can see and set my own limits. So awareness of what I'm feeling, awareness of what I'm thinking, awareness of what I'm doing. That's how I get to know myself, and I get to know what's okay for me and what's not okay for me. And then I can be true to thyself. So everybody says it in all kinds of ways, but it falls back to the same thing. Know myself, be aware, and to thine own self be true. Be clear about who you are. Be honest with yourself, and then you can be able to set honest boundaries.
The last question, Julia, is what are the main signs that a caregiver needs to develop more self-awareness?
I would say burnout. I would say pressure. I would say experience when you're feeling fatigued. You'll know it in your body. That would be my answer. Your body will tell you, because your body speaks the truth, right? We get information about ourselves through three things: sensations, our bodies; emotions, right? What I like to call my heart, big fan of the heart, and our thinking, okay? And those three pieces of data carry three different levels of validity. So just to make it short, I tell people your body is kind of like a peer-reviewed science report, right? It has the highest quality of information. Your emotions is like a really well-researched journal article. Not journal, but like a newspaper article, but well-researched from a respected newspaper article. And your mind, your thoughts is like social media. Okay? It has the least quality, least reliable information. As a matter of fact, somewhere between 80 to 90% of your thoughts are fictional and should be thrown out.
How much?
80 to 90% of our thoughts are fictional and should be thrown out. They're recycled and they're not useful at all. So that's why I said it's like social media, because even in social media, while most of the information is junk, it's based on a kernel of truth. And that's why people believe it, right? Because it's based in a little bit of truth with a lot of junk around it. Well, that's your thoughts. It's a little bit of truth with a lot of junk around it. And so the unfortunate thing is that we have been trained to rely on thinking, because we think it's so good and it's so rational and it's reasonable to go to thoughts. And we are told, the opposite. We're like, oh, rely on emotion. I'm sorry, avoid emotion because you shouldn't be making emotional decisions. And we're never taught to really use our bodies and to count on sensation. But the fact is that sensation and emotion have more information going into our brains and are more reliable. And so, if you want to know where you are, check your body and check your emotions. If you are in a space where you are exhausted, or you're feeling pressure, or you're heartbroken, you're noticing that you're getting depressed, you're getting, blocked, sad, right? Your energy is down, you're drained. That's how you know you're headed towards you are in a reactive space and you need some self-awareness, you need some cleaning up. Okay, you're gonna burn out and you're gonna crash really fast.
And there's so much more that we could be talking about in order to start learning about ourselves and the state that we are, and being more aware of what we're doing and how we're living as a family.
And I want to go back to this, right? So when you talk about, just to take this full circle, is better if you'd allow me. It's like, this person asked a question about how do I know when I am, I am needing this support. I want to say when this is happening inside of you, right? What about you? When your body is telling you you're hitting the max, when your emotions are telling you you're hitting the max. But of course, your mind is saying, I can't, and I can't stop, and I can't wait, and I must go, and I must go. And you keep going and going and going. This is when you're going to go from a reactive place. And the point of opportunity, right? Back to your family. Remember, your job is to allow a space for your family member to develop and grow. And when you're in crash mode, when you're not setting boundaries, when you don't know how to set a limit, when you're in reactive mode, when you're unaware. So I'm just pulling back all of what we talked about. When you are not aware of yourself, when you're not taking care of yourself and you're reacting and you're tired and you're stressed and you're not setting limits, guess what? That's a vicious cycle and it's just going to keep rolling and rolling. And so you're going to just stay in that space, getting things done. You're going to get the product. You're not going to get the process. You're going to lose multiple opportunities. And at the end of the day, the very thing you want for your family, remember when we started that whole thing I wanted for my family and how I show up and who I can be and how do I contribute and how do I create opportunities for my family? That goes out the window. And you know why it goes out the window? Because you're not okay. And that's why, Lisbeth, when you told the story, you said you came for your son and we said, what about you? It's the same thing. Yeah, you come for your son. I tell the parents all the time, you thought you brought your kid here? No, your kid brought you here, right? You think it's about them. I love that our children inspire us to do our best, but at the end of the day, this has to be for you. This has to be for you. And it's going to be for you because who wants to show up? I do. Who wants to meet my sacred goal of producing opportunity and raising, bringing the best version of myself and raising my child in the best way that I can? Me. That's me. I want that. I love that my child will get the benefit of it, but I want that for me. That's a for me situation because I want at the end of the day to know that I did my best. I don't want to betray myself. I don't want to hurt myself. And the first person I'm going to hurt when I don't do what I want to do, which is my sacred oath, I hurt me. And that's why this is about you. Do it for you. Your children will benefit. It's lovely, but do it for you.
Thank you, Julia. Thank you so much for all your insights, all these recommendations, just making ourselves just sit here and say, okay, so I'm here. Be aware of where you're at and what's surrounding you is obviously, but be aware of what's happening, be aware of what's happening inside of you. And there's so much more that we could talk about, I'm sure. But thank you for this time. Thank you for this space. Thank you for your knowledge, your experience. And everyone, if you don't follow Julia still and all of her media, we'll drop all the links below on our post. There's so much that you can benefit from her experience and from her programs. Her experience is marvelous. I couldn't say mucho menos. Sorry about this. So thank you again, Julia. Thank you. God bless you. God bless all your work, all your team. And thank you. Again, thank you. We're grateful people.
Thank you for having me here. And as we close, we'll just take one conscious breath, because when you have time for nothing else, you can do this. Take a nice breath in and be aware of it and just let it out. And if that's all you do, that's your introduction to awareness.
Wonderful. Thank you, Julia. Thank you. Gracias a todos. Que Dios les bendiga. Síganos en nuestras redes sociales y el próximo Hopecast va a estar también lleno de información sumamente valiosa para ustedes y sus familias, sus personas, sean con autismo o cualquier condición. De verdad que gracias por su apoyo y les mandamos un fuerte, fuerte abrazo. Thank you, Julia.